Have you ever been walking down the street and seen a blind person with a cane or someone in a wheelchair and thought, wow, that person is so strong and brave. I mean, I could never do what they do. Well, I'm here to tell you why that line of thinking is wrong. Someone disabled is not an inspiration just for waking up in the morning. They don't exist to be stared at and pitied. And just because someone is disabled does not necessarily mean that they can't be happy. Happiness is not necessarily limited by disability, and I'm going to be going through two examples to prove my point. So the first example I'll be talking about is blindness. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what blindness is, a lack of sight or poor visual perception. Obviously, being blind creates a lot of limitations in life. Travel becomes really difficult. Job opportunities are severely limited. And even social interaction is very hard. I mean, consider this. A blind person can never see the face of someone they love. But this is not necessarily a bad thing. Shown here is blind film critic Tommy Edison. Yes, blind film critic. And he has, in several interviews, stated the positive sides of being blind. One of these is that he has never judged someone by the color of their skin, by the level of their physical attractiveness, only by their personality. He's never judged a book by its cover, and how many of us can say that? Tommy Edison has not used his blindness as a way to pity himself. Instead, he's used it as a way to become an even better person. So the next aspect of blindness I'll be talking about is color perception. Obviously, blind people do not see color visually the way you and I do. However, neurologist Oliver Sacks, in his novel The Mind's Eye, has a theory that because blind people cannot see color visually, their imaginations might be more creative. So let's break this down for a second. The way you and I see color is pretty straightforward. You have your three primary colors, and from there you have a set color spectrum. However, we know that colors exist outside of this spectrum. We know that there are colors in the infrared and UV spectrum that exist, that other animals can see, but that we can never perceive. We can't even imagine them because of what we're already limited to. Now, blind people aren't like that. According to Oliver Sacks, because blind people have never been exposed to what colors actually look like in the real world, in their mind's eye, they can see colors as anything. Their imaginations are more vivid. And this doesn't just apply to color, but to any aspect of the visual world. To blind people, mountains and oceans and streams don't just look one way. By Sacks' theory, blind people in their mind's eye live a much more imaginative and vivid life than us. So the next disorder I'll be talking about is synesthesia, which is a bit more rare. Synesthesia is a neurological phenomenon where one sensory pathway in the brain is incorrectly connected to another, causing mixed senses. So people with synesthesia have reported seeing sounds, hearing colors, or associating numbers with colors, like shown above. Now, this creates some complications in life. For example, many people with synesthesia have reported to be bad in math, not necessarily because they don't understand what's going on, but because when you take an already complicated calculus equation and you add colors and emotions, it becomes even more difficult because calculus wasn't hard enough. And synesthesia has also been reported to cause difficulty with social interaction. Many people with synesthesia have sensory overload when they go into areas of high population. This means no summer beaches, no Times Square, no Disney World. So in spite of these disadvantages, most people that have synesthesia report not wanting to be cured. In fact, many of them consider it an advantage more than anything. So why is this? Why is the disorder that has so many negative influences considered to be a good thing? Well, neurologists V.S. Ramachandran and E.M. Hubbard have found reports stating that synesthesia has been linked to higher levels of creativity. Other neurologists like Rothen and Meyer have found that synesthesia is linked to better music tonality and increased aesthetic. So people with synesthesia happen to be more artistic, more creative than regular people. And in fields like music and art, the proportion of people with synesthesia is higher than in the general population. In fact, many famous people who are in these industries have been reported to have synesthesia. Maybe you've heard of some of them. The most infamous would be famous Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. A more modern example would be Fall Out Boy lead singer Patrick Stump. And even the infamously beautiful Marilyn Monroe was reported to have synesthesia. Now, all of these people had a disorder that did in some way limit their lives. However, they didn't use it as a reason to pity themselves. Instead, they used it in their fields to become even better at what they do. Synesthesia became a way for these people to see the world in a different light. In fact, in Norman Mailer's biography of Marilyn Monroe, he stated that she had a displacement of the senses that others took drugs to find. Synesthesia became a way for Marilyn and other people like her to see the world in a different light. It certainly has its disadvantages, but it most certainly has its advantages. So what's the point of all this, of me talking to you about blindness and synesthesia? What does it do? Well, the main lesson to get out of this is that the way you perceive the world and the way the world perceives you should not limit your happiness. Happiness is creative, it's imaginative, and it can be found anywhere. All you have to do is go look for it. Thank you.